want to introduce our three workshop hosts, Grato Paneque, Jackie Paneque, and Meghan Mcrann. So first, I'll turn it over to you guys to start with the agenda.
Good, thanks, Kunal. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Paneque, and I am the business specialist here at Reclass. We are now going to move on to the workshop in this segment. Kunal and Grato and Meghan will talk in the first portion to illustrate our current efforts and vision. After that, we hope to open up to the floor to everyone to get their input. If you have any questions during this portion, please wait until the end of the informative piece or message me in the chat.
So I wanted to start off on why we are working with veterans again. Across the nation, there are programs committed to helping veterans get back into society. There's several in New York at different prisons. They're called Move On, and their goal is to help veterans prepare for reentry. And over the past 8 years they've been doing the program, they've gone over 100 individuals, only one has come back. And that's incredible when you think about statistics we started off this presentation with, where it's talking about how in 5 years, 77% of incarcerated individuals go back to jail. By investing upfront and working with them while they're incarcerated so that they have a firm footing when they get out the door, they're less likely to return. Georgia has 3 separate veteran honors dorms, 2 in male prisons. One was at Rutledge, which is near Fort Benning, and one was in Atlanta. And they have a third one, which is a women's only prison, and that's for women veterans. And all 3 of them allow for the incarcerated veterans to be taken away from the general population. They're put into special dorms, given, like the ones I was working with, more access to technology, writing material, reading material, so that they can better prepare themselves. And finally, Arizona, they have several prisons where they're working on a veteran reintegration program so that when you get out, you have the ability to have a driver's license or a state ID in your name, you have a banking account, like you're able to rejoin using all of the resources available to you. And finally, a lot of states have gone to having veteran courts where they recognize veterans have had different experiences than the majority of the population, and they are given different sentences that reflect how their time in service has affected them. And with that being said, I would like to turn it over to Grato.
Alrighty, thank you, Kunal. I'm going to keep this relatively brief because I want to make sure we have more than enough room to leave for feedback in terms of having a nice little dialogue, hearing what you guys have to say and giving us advice for moving forward. A lot of the statistics that I'll touch on briefly, you could find that more in detail with the publications that are out there and the future ones that are going to be linked going forward. And there's a bunch of articles that you guys have access to within the one piece of recidivism that's out there right now. But moving on with that, again, real briefly, you know, education, it's very important. It reduces repeat offenders. The inmates who participated in educational programs, they had 43% lower odds of recidivating than inmates who did not. Providing education, this is a long-term strategy. So inmates, they cost 2.8 times the cost of a student on average. You'll see that in a graphic that we have coming up, and Jacqueline will touch on that briefly as well. But the cost of correctional spending, that's exacerbated by a recidivism rate of 68% within 3 years and upwards of 83% within 9 years. The rehabilitative approach, that is a more humanizing one, and just in general, it's a cost-effective one, and everybody wants to save money. As illustrated in the article, we see just how effective education can be. You know, costs, they average over $36,000 a year per inmate, and that dramatically decreases if provided the tools to do so. For example, giving these individuals both marketable and technical skills to keep them out of the system. Next slide, please. And here, as I said, I'm going to turn over to Jacqueline real quick just to discuss this graphic, since she really helped organize the statistics in a nice way. So let me make sure I get this over.
Thanks, Grato. The chart on the screen illustrates 45 states and their data regarding inmates spending and their spending for secondary education, which secondary education is basically equivalent to high school diploma or a GED. You'll see the glaring disparity between the cost per inmate that is depicted by the orange dots and then the cost per student, which are the blue bars. This touches upon what Grato had mentioned of inmates being more than double the cost of a secondary education on average. And in fact, the cost per inmate in New York, based on this data sourced, goes as high as $70,000. So you'll clearly see that education, just providing the basics, will help alleviate that cost that even Kunal mentioned in the welcome session. So now I'll hand it back to Grato to discuss how this environment creates benefits and challenges for Reclass.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Yeah, again, the cost of education, that is much less than the cost of incarceration, as Jackie touched on. The cost of that secondary education, which we're talking about, high school or GED equivalent, that's substantially less, as you saw. And in turn, education reduces recidivism. And recidivism, we're talking about, it's both a physical and a financial burden to prisons. It's a physical burden by increasing the prison population. And, in turn, by doing so, it's increasing the odds to both the state, or rather increasing the cost to both the state and the taxpayers. For many inmates, these statistics include those who have been incarcerated before and have reoffended, leading to their reincarceration. We coined this is known as the revolving door of the criminal justice system. You may have heard it before, but that's a term that we like to throw around a lot. So by providing them the education, we are in turn equipping them the skills to get out and to stay out. Another big thing in the field are evidence-based practices. And these are things that, there's a lot of history to it. And you have two sides where, you have the traditional side where, as Kunal said, the individual he worked with, the prison warden, he was from a maximum background and a more stern crime control view because everything that comes along with that. But more recently, there's been research regarding these things known as evidence-based practice, which are becoming the driving force for policy and criminal justice reform. Those in the field, we like to back up action with statistics and proven data. So we have the opportunity here to align ourselves with that data out there and actually become the voice for the incarcerated military veteran population. So that's really exciting stuff. Next slide, please. As I said, criminal justice reform, that's a political topic, so we got to be careful how we navigate these waters. Just a brief little background about this, due process. So that's the rehabilitative and therapeutic approach to justice. And we coined that as kind of an obstacle course justice, whereby more focus is on the individual as opposed to the collective. Whereas crime control, that's the more punitive approach to justice. This is seen as the assembly line perspective, whereby all individuals are, in a way, streamlined through the system with almost a cookie cutter approach. And, that works in some cases, but that doesn't work in other cases. And, later on we can fully discuss that should you guys want to. But it is safe to say, for those of you that are here right now and are interested in our mission, you most likely align yourself with the rehabilitative approach where you want that focus back on the individual. And fortunately for us all, the data agrees with us. This mindset is becoming ever more popular. And through recent research backing the rehabilitative models of justice, it's because, again, it's cost effective. It is bringing folks back to the individual. It's a more humanizing approach. And just in general, it's the efficacy of it is remarkable, which is why a lot of the research out there is becoming more prevalent to back this, although there are still gaps. And in terms of incarcerated veterans, that is a gap within a gap. And that's what we're trying to bridge. And that's what we're trying to provide down the road to potentially bridge those two gaps. So it is a broad topic. Basically, you know, what's relative to reclass? Who are our viewers? You know, we want to narrow down our focus areas based on what is most relevant to reclass initiatives at that time. And as well, you know, we also want to see what garners the most interest from all of you and the people that we're working with. As I said, you know, there's limited data on incarcerated veterans, and we can fill that gap. There is scarce information about just in education as a whole provided to incarcerated veterans. So this is our chance to fill that and become that evidence-based practice that represents this population. You know, this is exciting because the mission that we have here at Reclass and the partners that were touched on earlier and their missions that they have, it saves money, and you know, this has the potential to save lives. So it's exciting stuff, and thank you all for joining us in this endeavor and see what we're all about. So now, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Meghan, and she can discuss the outreach opportunities that we have and all the exciting stuff on her end. So thank you guys.
Okay, Meghan, if you can introduce yourself and then go into what we're doing here.
Hello everyone, my name is Meghan. I'm a field artillery officer stationed in North Carolina, and I will be switching to Signal. Currently I help plan the logistics with Project Reclass, and we're trying to establish partnering with industries within the CompTIA network of who provide accreditation and certification to individuals to receive the Net Plus, the Sec Plus, the A Plus certifications. And today we're going to talk about the work opportunity tax credit and stigmas within having incarcerated veterans within your job. So the big thing that is a benefit to partnering with industries right now is this work opportunity tax credit. With this work opportunity tax credit, companies are able to receive about $9,000 back per employee that they have within their job force who fits a profile, and there's 9 profiles under this tax credit. 2 that we're looking at is the veteran and then the ex-felon. Although we don't like to use the word felon, this is what the tax credit has under the system. With these, were both of these groups were interested in because, one, the veterans only have had one job typically, which is the military, which goes under the stigmas. They don't have the ability to have different skill sets. So like with this, we're teaching them how to utilize networking and potentially coding at some point later down the road. And then with the ex-felons, the stigma is that they have a break in job, just like veterans. So with this tax credit, within 1 year of hiring someone within these 2 groups, they have the ability to receive this $9,000 as they keep this employee employed. So having the incarcerated veteran employed helps not only them as an individual to gain financial independence and reclassify themselves so they do not end back up in prison or in the system, and then as well as helping the employer by getting a tax credit for hiring these individuals. And then also another stigma that we are trying to go about getting rid of is hiring an individual who has been to prison, because typically when you get somebody's resume, you're like, oh, you see the box, have you been convicted of a felony or have you been to jail before? And that goes into ban the box. People most of the time don't want to hire somebody who has been to prison with a felony. They potentially can think, oh my gosh, you're going to steal from my job, or I'm going to lose customers by hiring you. So no, sorry, you're not good for our organization. With Ban the Box, there is something called that recently came out on December 17th of last year. It is called the Fair Chance to Compete for Jobs Act, and this was passed with the National Defense Authorization Act. This is similar to the Ban the Box campaign that is going on. The Ban the Box campaign is a goal of removing the box that asks you, have you been arrested before? Do you have a criminal record? Have you been a felon? Have you gone to jail? So this act gets rid of that for competing for job opportunities within the federal agencies. And then the one downside of this is that it doesn't take place until December of 2021. And then another downside of this, it doesn't completely get rid of the employer conducting a background check on the individual. So it is a step in the right direction, but it still has a long way to go. And that's what we're trying to do here with Project Reclass, is even if that individual they go make it through, the Ban the Box is gone, they get almost awarded the contract, and then that employer goes to run the background check. They're like, holy cow, you've been arrested. But we want to make sure that these individuals are trained to standard, and even though they have that record, they're still able to get the contract to work with this agency because they have the knowledge and they're skilled enough to compete with people who may have not gone to prison or been incarcerated before. And then with that, our one main goal is to work with industry experts who have utilized the accreditation for CompTIA. If you're not aware, the Network Plus certification costs about $329 every time you test. And that's a lot of money for somebody who has recently been released from prison. They don't have the financial ability to pay for the certification because they have a break in employment due to being incarcerated, and then they'll have a hard time getting jobs on the outside of being incarcerated. So we would like to work with industries who have been accredited to go about trying to get a voucher for these individuals, if not completely free, just at a cut price, so that way they are able to, like we said, reclassify and provide financial independence for themselves and or their family. And then with that, each time the voucher is only good for 3 years, and then you have to recertify. So we'd also like the ability to work with these industry partners to get the recertification for these vouchers to keep these post-incarcerated veterans employed to continue to provide themselves so they do not end up back into the system again. And that's the big goal with this, is how do we partner with these industries, and how do we compare our program with incarcerated veterans to people who have not previously been imprisoned. And Kunal, that's all I have if anybody has any questions.
No, that was wonderful. So with these two concerns, we want to work with industry, we want to work with companies, but we also want to work with prisons. We have to find unique ways to reach out to them so that they're willing to open their doors to a population that, for the majority of the American population, there's a bit of hesitation. And we need to partner with them and approach them in such a way that they're willing to work with us. And I will turn this over to Jackie now to get ready for the next piece of this discussion we're having.
Thanks, Kunal. And thanks, Meghan. So with the information that Grato had presented and Meghan had presented with the benefits challenges and what we kind of aim to do for Reclass, we kind of want your input. If you could go to the next slide real quick. On the following questions, which I will provide a link in the chat in case you want to answer them via the Google form and be anonymous, or you could just chat me on Zoom, whether to everyone or privately. So the questions we want to propose as a discussion point, or if you have any other ones, feel free. How would we fill the gap with data on veterans? Currently, there is not much data with incarcerated population and education as is, and then there's scarce to none with those that are incarcerated and veterans. How do we want to help take away that stigma of incarcerated, instead of seeing them as just a statistic and as just a prisoner, seeing them as people. How do we help them in society? How do we encourage employers to hire after an offer? How do we approach those companies? We aim to try to give them the skill set to find a job, but how do they actually get into the door with employers? And then lastly, how do we market the brand and image of Project Reclass to interested parties? So that's you guys. That's the companies we work for. That's the prisoners, the prisons, and the individuals that may go through these curriculums. So those are the questions that are on the Google form. Feel free to post it on those or in the chat. Just this is kind of just an open discussion, so feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand, and then we'll call on you.
And as you guys are filling this out, I just want to give a quick vignette about something I remembered as we were going through the slides. When Tay and I were teaching back at Rutledge, I remember we had one lesson where we talked about wireless networks and we talked about wired networks. And then I would go every Friday, except for the 4-day weekends the Army gives us, I would be there. So in 1 week, we talked about wired networks, wireless networks, and how, how they work. Next week, the very first question they asked me was, so last week on whatever day, Elon Musk launched Starlink, and they had all these questions related to how does Starlink work when it's a satellite-based internet provider. And I was shocked. I'm like, how did you guys? And they pulled out a Wired magazine. They had all these written down comments from when it showed up on the TV because they were able to watch nightly news. They're like, yeah, it's happening. And they're like, how will we still be employable if it's going to be up in the sky with Skylink or with Starlink? And I was shocked at how laser focused they were, not just on current changes, but how does that affect them? And that shows the importance of providing them opportunities to grow their skills, because in the technology sphere, things change very fast. And the fact that they understood that and we're still trying to find ways to get ahead of the problem shows why we want to work with such a committed group. And we want to make sure they're given the tools for success, because when you provide just a little bit, I was shocked at how they had notes, they had highlights, they had written up like little ideas about how they thought the network could have worked on Starlink. They really wanted to be involved in the discussion and in the future of the American network system. So that also can help us when we want to talk to employers, we want to talk to other prisons, like look at how committed these individuals become, how less prone they are to getting involved with trouble. All this people who I worked with in our cohort of 21, 22 students had no issues with disciplinary issues beforehand and continued that while they're with us. And that will serve as a mark of distinction when they go to their next job. So with that being said, anything on the feedback form, Jackie?
Not yet, but if anyone wants to just talk in the open forum, feel free.
Yes, this is our way of preparing for, like we said, quarter or year 2021 and beyond. So we have notes, we're ready to talk, and we just want to discuss with you guys for the vision. Anything from Anthony or Matt or Jed or Burge, this is your chance to have a say in an atom in our future path.
Hey, Kunal, can you hear me?
Yeah.
First off, awesome intro.
And while they try and see if there's anything that they want to bring up, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there, something that we do have as a potential project coming, down the line, long term. I've been talking about it with Kunal and Tay and several others. If we can maintain contact with these recently released individuals who completed the curriculum, we can form our own data set to become that evidence-based practice that I touched on a little earlier. There's a lot of studies that we can essentially replicate some done by the Vera Institute of Justice, the RAND Corporation, et cetera, et cetera. And it will be great if we can, sort of replicate that using our own data gathered by the participants that Kunal works with hand in hand. It would all be, voluntary, of course. And just basically to see, did these individuals utilize the skills learned with the curriculum? What happened to them when they got out? Of course, did they stay out? Did they stay in contact with us? And just how, in general, where they were and where they are now. And again, this is just a chance for them to tell their story anonymously and share their experience as that testimony as to why this worked for them, why it can work for others, and it can align with the evidence-based practices that have shown why this is working. This is a relatively new concept that is gaining more momentum, and we have that chance to jump on that tidal wave and keep this perpetually flowing. Because this works. This stuff works. It saves money. It changes lives. And all in all, this is a win-win. So if we have that opportunity to create our own data and use it for something like that, that'll be great, because that moreover ties in how we can be that practice to fill that gap and be that voice for the incarcerated veterans who, made a mistake. They swore an oath to this country. They slipped up. They're humans like you and I and everybody else. We make mistakes, and there's no reason we can't have that opportunity to work with these, minimum and medium offenders who they're low-level, non-violent drug offenses or what have you, but these are people that have the potential to turn their lives around, move forward, and become contributing with the society as they once were. And that's something that's very exciting to jump on. So that's just something that we're throwing around as well.
I think you guys did a great job of stressing the economic benefits of this, because I think that a lot of people will have the thought that, like, oh, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to prisoners.
And that's a key part where, there is a lot of disparaging of, why does a prisoner get this kind of resource? And a lot of that it is well founded, but the problem is 95% of people get out of prison. So one of our panelists will speak more about it. Mr. Aaron Forringer was a parole agent, and he was talking about how America is in the middle between a punitive and rehabilitative. And we're in the middle, and it's not going too well from his foxhole as a parole agent. He's like, if we want to help them rebuild, we should invest in that. If we want them to be punished, we should invest in that. We can't have it both ways and do it subpar at the same time. So that's where Project Reclass is coming in to help find a lightweight, scalable solution to bring into prisons across the country. Because a lot of the programs we talked about in the first slide deck are regionally aligned. So California, there's a nonprofit called The Last Mile, which only is involved in 6 prisons, and they teach coding. In Arizona, we talked about those veterans-focused wings of prisons. There's in a few of them. They're not widespread. In Texas, they have an entire higher education system geared towards helping prisoners, but that's only in Texas. You go one state over north north, east, or west, and they don't have it. Like Texas is its own Texas prison school system. Say it again?
Oh, sorry, that was my brother.
Oh, okay. Do you have any questions though, Adam?
I have a question. First of all, I think you guys are doing such a wonderful job reaching out the inmates. My question is to Kunal. Kunal, in regards to the veterans that have mental issues, that are staying in institutions that are for mental patients, how is Reclass reaching out to them? Or are you at that point yet or not?
So our focus is on people who are about to exit the prison. So we are very involved with rehabilitation centers or transition centers, because that's where they are also afforded more leave privileges. So if we can partner with industry, and they already have pipelines so that people who are about to leave within 18 months are allowed to leave the prison under supervision, work at a place of employment, and then come back at night and be in the prison. And that is our main focus. We are not involved with the medical side. Like, there's medical prisons, and we are working right now in one field, and then we're trying to get to others as we can grow. And Jackie has a response as well.
Yeah, so we got a response on the forum. So in the question of how do we take away that stigma for incarceration, someone had said, the stories so far from our experience with veterans, what are some of the successes? Sharing those and their personal journey will go a huge way. So I think this also ties into what Grato was saying, having that pipeline with the veterans and using the whole patriotism of America as our guiding way of getting rid of the stigma, and then going forward probably with just incarcerated individuals as a whole. Um, for the question of how to encourage employers to hire after an offer and how do we approach the company, the material presented today would be very impactful during a frank discussion with the company's HR. There's a lot of good data behind this, and you guys have done your research very well. So whoever responded to that, thank you. And then for the additional feedback, they had said the mission statement that we currently have is impactful and informative.
And any printed material, any emailed material will always have our vision and our mission statement. And like we said at the beginning, Tay and I do not want to profit off this. We want this to be a free license. So it could be used in schools, could be used in the way I first thought about it would be a lot of times. I remember myself included, when I've been in the field, when I've been in training, there's a lot of downtime. And I would love to allow someone, if they wanted to take that step, to teach themselves with downtime if they're in service. This app is made by current service members and former service members so that they could learn. And I would always talk to the incarcerated veterans in their language. I would refer to, acronyms and terminology and bases. They all had been there, they all had served there, they all understood what I was talking to them about. And that is key when we start working with people outside of our circle, and when we start talking to businesses. Like Meghan was talking about how they've now banned the box. Federal contractors who work on base have to hire a certain percentage of people, be it race, gender, whatever it may be. And we want to allow our former incarcerated veterans to apply for those jobs, be competitive for those jobs, and get hired not as a statistic, but as an employee who brings benefit. And with these transition centers, where Augusta has one, Augusta is also home to the Army Cyber Center and Army Cyber Command. So there's a lot of contracting jobs out there for people who want to lay cable, be a cable dog, be a network specialist, be someone who helps run the data centers. And with the commitment I saw with the people at Rutledge, and they were following up with new technology, that is something companies are always trying to instill in their employees. And if we can show them that these individuals have that hunger to continue learning, even when we're not present, they are a far better candidate than someone who just has a piece of paper that says, I can do Network Plus, but is not actually invested in the program. So my appeal for everyone on this call is, if anyone wants to be involved with our outreach, if they want to help us reach out to companies, help scale out our deployment of toy nets that can be delivered to other prison systems, this is key. And the last thing I want to leave with before I turn it back to Jackie is, I did not realize this till I went to a prison, but every prisoner in Georgia is issued a tablet. It's called a gold tablet, where if we're able to get Toynet to a degree that it can be ported onto a Android-like device, the state of Georgia will allow us as an educational institution to provide Toynet for people to use, besides using on Chromebooks, which they also had at Rutledge. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jackie.
Real quick, Grato did want to say something regarding a previous question that was done.
Yeah, I know we're wrapping this up, so I just wanted to address the question brought up by Hasid Sloan. I hope I'm saying that properly. With the mental health realm of Reclass, like Kunal said, that's not really the focus area right now, but we still do dabble in that for content. Garrett did a piece on telemedicine, just discussing the intersect with technology in criminal justice system, and of course, how that intersects with mental health. So I was lucky to get my dad, who was a forensic psychiatrist. We talked about this earlier in the event, and he helped out with that piece. And we are probably going to put a secondary piece with that in the future and just get more feedback from my dad and the stories that he has with that technological intersect, because he's a very old school guy, paper. And now there's all of this tech that threw him a bone, and he, was struggling to deal with that towards the end of his career. Because there is that massive intersect, and of course with mental health and the criminal justice system, they're all crossroads with one another. So although that's not the focus of Reclass, we still do dabble in that just as content to put out there for research. But I just wanted to throw that out there real fast for you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. We got a few more responses, such as like reaching out to academia, starting with the veterans as is. We definitely internally go through all these responses for consideration into Q4 as well as calendar year 2021. And then just so I don't forget, for Burgess's question regarding soft skills, currently we're only doing the Toynet demo, but it is a potential in the future, and we have it on the just as ideas of giving those soft skills as like mock interviews and resume workshops.
And we also are doing soft skills when it comes to people who work with us. So if you are working within Reclass, we will help, introduce you to our network of people in industry, people that can help with, technical interviews, look over resumes, because we want to be Reclass not just for our participants in prison, but also for us ourselves. Like I myself am reclassing officially in the Army from being a 13 Alpha to becoming a 17 Alpha. We also have other members who are currently changing from being an architect to being, whatever their previous past is, to a new field. And this is a chance for them to flex their muscles, be it in tech, be it in marketing, be it in research, whatever it may be. It gives them a chance to explore something new and be in an environment where everyone is encouraging and working towards the same common goal.
Thank you, Kunal. And next slide.
Let's see.
So overall, next slide after that. So overall, thank you everyone for joining this vision track in the workshop. We greatly appreciate your input, whether it be the forum, the discussion, etc. And like as Kunal says, we try to help those that are part of the volunteer program to help their career, help their ambitions within just their day-to-day as well. So if you would like to join, we would love to have you. We have many opportunities in a vast variety. It's not just technology, it's not just research. So we would love to find a fit for you. If you would like to join us, just stick around after the panelists or go to our website. We have a Get Involved section.
And with that, I'm going to usher us back to the general chat. Garrett put the link for Get Involved, and we'll have, we're going to have a simple discussion. If you would like to go to the tech briefing and get your last bit to see what's going on there, this is your chance. And then we're all going to reconvene in the main general room for our panelists starting at 4 o'clock. But at 3:45, we'll begin the preamble.